The Zambia Environmental Management Agency, they do have a mandate to ensure that corporates and individuals are being held accountable for the waste that they put out. The whole idea is just do the best that you can to safeguard the environment. Try not to use toxic products. Try not to have to just set a fire outside your yard. I'm talking to you guys, consumers. Don't do that. So, for example, Delia, if your business is you sell jeans, okay, and you sell jeans, your store is at East Park. You could be responsible just within a 5-mile radius of this environment, and you can take an initiative to pick litter around, your environment, or to provide maybe some water sustainability. That's something that is genuine and won't really cost you much.
Hello and welcome to the Money and People podcast, the show where we connect the dots between financial success and the power of human capital. Today, we are joined by Mulubwa Chola, who is a lawyer that is passionate about ESG and sustainability and a number of other passions that she's going to tell us about. Welcome to the show, Mulubwa.
I'm passionate about God, first of all.
Okay.
And then I'm passionate about family, but in the professional sphere, I am passionate about ESG, sustainability, data protection, corporate governance, and compliance.
Okay.
Also human resource. I'm getting into human resource a little bit. Yeah, I think it's fun. It's a good place to go.
Yeah, and I think with your background and your other passions, it blends really well with human resources. Nowadays, they're calling it people, culture, all sorts of things. And everything that you've described, I think it revolves around people. So quite an exciting bunch of passions. Yeah, and today we are going to be discussing greenwashing and its legal implications. I think this is quite a topical conversation, especially right now with all that's going on in the space of ESG and companies trying to really prove that they have come to the table. But we know that with that also comes people trying to, really paint a picture sometimes of what is not really happening. So I'm excited to just get into this topic with you.
I'm excited as well. Holding corporates accountable for environmental sustainability is a huge passion of mine. And so yeah, let's get right into it.
Okay. So as a way to just get our audience to know a little bit more about you, who is Mulubwa Chola and how did you find yourself at this point in your career and what was the journey like?
That's a loaded question. I love to say I'm just a little girl from Chingola. But I'm a third born in a family of 4. I am, the third daughter of my parents. I am a really passionate person, a lawyer that didn't take the typical legal route. I did work for a law firm and then not enjoy it very much. So sorry, Mr. Manachiku. But yeah, I think that a journey of a lot of failure led me to where I was. I flunked out of the bar exam and gave up for some time, and then explored other passions in marketing and brand awareness, and found God somewhere along the way, and eventually, came back to this space, and was able to find my feet, and more than just find my feet, actually, really establish myself in all of the different areas I'm passionate about. So really, I give the glory to God. I got here only by his speed and favor.
Okay. So funny that you mentioned that along the way you decided to like go a different direction, but it makes me want to take you back a little bit to when did you decide that you wanted to be a lawyer? Is it something you wanted to do from when you were young? Who inspired you into this career?
Hmm. Well, it's something that my parents sort of always spoke,
Okay.
actually, because I was named after my grandfather and he always wanted to be a lawyer. He unfortunately died just when he got qualified, so he
Oh
never really got
no.
to get admitted to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
He was police commissioner back in the day and a really brilliant man, and so I was named after him, Mulubwa. And so I guess my parents sort of spotted my characteristics. They said I was the justice child, always it's not fair, this. So, it's something I feel naturally into. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
oppose it because I sort of aligned with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so law school was very fun for me. I participated in university. I'm a University of Lusaka alumni.
Okay.
I served as vice president of the student union and secretary general as well. So I enjoyed law school a lot.
Mm.
And everything went well until I got to Ziali, and I was very young when I graduated law school. I was only 21 when I was
Oh
done with law school.
wow.
Yeah, so, finding myself in that space, was maybe a little bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm grateful for the slowdown. But then, even then, I wrote about environmental sustainability at my undergrad.
Oh wow.
And I did so at master's level as well. I've
Okay.
always sort of found a way to bring the environment into what I was studying. It just
Okay.
came a bit more easier to me.
So you were preaching ESG before ESG was trending.
100%.
Yeah.
I would love for you or anybody else to read my master's thesis. I wrote about the connection between environmental sustainability and corporate accountability,
Mm-hmm.
and spoke deeply about a principle called corporate citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
That is well embedded in the King 4 reports of corporate governance.
Mm.
So that is the South African regulation, but it's sort of become standard for corporates to follow the King 4 reports because they're just well articulated. They move with the times. King
Yeah.
5 is coming out soon, and we expect to see a new angle on sustainability. So I've been writing about that for some time actually. I wrote
Yeah.
about environmental impact assessments and how the public can participate and review the regulation there. So environmental law has always been that um, that passion that I didn't think anyone was going to be interested in, and I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful for how many doors it's opened, so many years later.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, I serve as the Environmental Law Subcommittee Chairperson under the
Oh,
Law Association of Zambia. So, you know,
okay.
stick to what you like, ladies and gentlemen, and to take you places.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I mean, you've spoken just a little bit towards the end about the role that you are playing in the Law Association of Zambia.
Mhm.
And how are you finding being in leadership and what do you feel um, has changed from the time
Mm.
that ESG just became this topic that we're hearing about and to where we are today? Like, are you seeing us moving in the right direction, or is it
Mm.
something that you and the other leadership is trying to push now in a certain direction in Zambia?
Well, it's actually quite rare for somebody, of my tenure at the bar to find themselves in leadership. So, it's really a great privilege that the my fellow lawyers trusted me
Mm-hmm.
with leading in that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like I said, passion really makes things come a bit easier. I'm really proud of where we are in terms of becoming more aware about ESG. For those who may not know, it stands for environmental, social, and governance practices.
Mm-hmm.
I love to say that it's a trauma response, right, to everything that we've been going through as the world.
Yeah.
After COVID, businesses were now more aware of how the environment could affect their everyday life. Of course, we lost so many people, and we just wanted to come out on the other side better equipped.
Yeah.
So ESG has always sort of existed in different capacities, but now I find that people took notice. What was the difference between the businesses that failed completely during this unexpected turmoil, and what was the thing that set the businesses that thrived apart?
Yeah.
And you find right in that intersection is where ESG comes up for me.
Mm.
The businesses that paid attention to the environment, both the business environment and their physical environment,
Yeah.
the businesses that cared about their social presence, the businesses that had excellent governance practices, they stood out. So now every other business is sort of saying, this is something we need to prioritize.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've been telling you guys, read my thesis. So
Okay.
yeah, that's where we're at. So with the leadership of the Law Association of Zambia, they've been very empowering with a lot of our projects, you know, having specific budgets towards what we're doing in the environmental law subcommittee as well. Our chairperson, Valerie Kawango, also super supportive, the vice president as well, and the president have also been very supportive of the initiatives that we've held. And there's still a lot of work to do. At least over my tenure, over the next 2 years, I will try and make sure that, you know, our committee keeps bringing more and more awareness to this movement.
Okay, that's really great. And diving into today's topic, I know you have described what ESG is, but for those who do not know, what exactly is greenwashing when we talk about greenwashing?
Okay. So greenwashing is basically when companies pretend to be more environmentally aware than they actually are, or more sustainable than they actually are. So they give an appearance of, you know, pushing environmental sustainability when they're not actually being environmentally sustainable.
Okay. And do we have examples of that in today's, like practical examples of how companies are doing that?
Well, you know, we do. And I was thinking about this a lot earlier when you told me what we're going to be discussing today. As much as there are companies that deliberately, you know, will greenwash, and the reason actually behind it is ESG, environmental sustainability, have become a huge conversation.
Yeah.
If anything, you see in a lot of societies, people want to make a difference on their own.
Yes.
And their part to play as consumers is engaging with products that are more sustainable. So people will now pay more attention to what their clothing is made of, or, you know, the kind of cup that they're drinking from, or, you know, whether or not people are recycling. So it's almost trendy right now to
Yeah.
be sustainable. So companies do want to be a part of the conversation, and definitely they want to drive sales. So before I go into that, I just want to highlight for the audience, ESG looks at the fact that, you know, there's the environmental sustainability that looks at how the business environment, number one, is being, a company is participating in that business environment, because as we know, a company is a separate legal personality. So it is its own person. It just doesn't have its hands and legs.
Yeah.
But it is now what we call a corporate citizen, meaning we're saying, if you are going to acknowledge yourself as a person, then you have a part to play in this society that we exist in. But number one, it's part of the business environment where it's existing with other companies like itself. So how it interacts with those other companies is a priority.
Yeah.
But then interacting with those other companies means it needs to look at where its resources are coming from. So for example, the company that made this chair or this table would be looking at the resource that it uses to make these, whether it's wood or leather, whatever it is. And so they have to sort of care where that comes from, because if they run out of that product, then they don't have something to sell. The environmental part of ESG looks at how we're interacting with our fellow business people and how we're interacting with our resources, the environment. Okay. You see that maybe through COVID, for example, if your business environment is shut down because of what the people are going through, then you don't have much to sell or do. So that moves us to the S part, which is the social part. How are your people faring? That is, a very deep topic that starts from how are people in your organization socially receiving your culture, okay? And also how are they doing socially within the environment? You as a company needs to care about it, because if they're losing people continuously like it was in COVID, then they're socially not doing okay. But even then, how are they socially receiving you as a business? So socially speaking, is your business accepted? So I'll give an example of maybe Balenciaga, and I'm only saying this because it was a well-known issue, right? With Balenciaga, they had this ad, right, that was not well received by society. Remember that? Yes. So because of that, their sales sort of plummeted. So whether or not they were using sustainable material, or they were, doing the right thing in other areas, if socially they're not being well received, then that's a problem, right? And so governance as well, the structure of a company, how is that company being well managed? So when you look at greenwashing, it's about the S part. It's about this company wanting to be socially accepted, because socially speaking, taking care of your environment is, something that your consumers are interested in. But also, generally speaking, it does benefit you environmentally to do it. So when we look at greenwashing, they want to be part of the conversation, but in my opinion, a lot of them just don't know how to do it the right way. So they want to say we're eco-friendly, we're this and that, so that they can feel accepted by society. But there is this part of them that actually does want to do the right thing environmentally, because it would benefit them to take care of the environment. They just maybe don't have the tools. And for those, I think we are much harsher on corporates that, are doing excellent or are internationally renowned, because you do have the tools. You have the budget to call Vantagepoint Risk Consultants, my organization, and get the right advice on how to be correctly sustainable. So greenwashing exists, but it's a bit unfortunate that it's termed that way, because it's something that we need to look to correct.
And I think we will include probably a link to your business page for people who are interested in your consultancy services.
Right. Thank you.
As Vantage Business Consulting. But also, um, you've also highlighted something that just popped up. It's also, even when startups are trying to get funding, I think, because right now, if your startup is pushing sustainability in any way, or is eco-friendly in any way, you are more likely to get funding. So I think the temptation will be there as well to just greenwash, because you want to get people hooked on your business idea. And if you went to different funders and your business does not talk anything about how you're contributing to sustainability or to greener practices, you might not get the funding. So it's trending for big corporates, but even for just small startups, for them to get that funding, they may exaggerate their green footprint, for example, just to get that funding. So how do you recommend that small businesses also navigate funding, and what are the ways that they can actually also, even though they don't have the budget, because like you mentioned, for the bigger corporates, they may actually even have the capacity to actually leave that a mark in this space. But for a small startup that's just starting, and for them, they're actually now seeking that funding, how can they actually incorporate proper sustainability and ESG practices in their business without exaggerating it,
I see. So I really love that question, because it really speaks a lot to even where I'm at and what I do a lot. I'll start by saying SMEs have a huge role to play.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ways to go about it. I'm heading a startup, or somewhat a startup, with Vantagepoint Risk Consultants, and maybe the only unique perspective is that our advisory services also speak to sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
I carry that passion with me, but we are using the resources that we have. You see, with Vantagepoint, we don't believe in really external funding. We're trying to grow organically, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But we still want to play in the sustainability way, not only for the clients that we're advising, but how we go about it. So on the ESG perspective, on the S part, we've been going around to universities and speaking to them about, pillars of business to bring awareness. That's you playing to the social aspect of giving back. Most people think you need a bunch of money to donate, but it starts from what you are offering,
Yeah.
okay, and giving back to that. Okay, so environmentally speaking, we do have some plans that I'm not allowed to speak about yet.
Yeah.
But I will say for our fellow SMEs,
Mm-hmm.
start where you are. There's a lot that you can do that won't be greenwashing, but will really be genuine and authentic. You can pick litter in the environment where you are. I truly believe that businesses thrive most when they pay attention to the community which they are impacting the most. So, for example, Delia, if your business is you sell jeans,
Yeah.
okay? And you sell jeans, your store is at East Park.
Yeah.
You could be responsible just within a 5 mile radius of this environment, and you
Yeah.
can take an initiative to pick litter around, your environment, or to provide maybe some water sustainability. That's something that is genuine and won't really cost you much. You
Yeah.
could even invite your customers to come on board and help you with this sustainability practice. What we find as greenwashing that is misleading is tagging your products as eco-friendly, sustainable,
When they're
ethical,
not.
and nobody really knows what that means. You know what I mean? Because eco-friendly, you find that on a lot of tags, but what it means is that you are very passionate about waste management. But
Yeah.
a lot of these organizations are not. Something that really led me to really being more enthusiastic about ESG is just orphaned waste. Have you heard about orphaned waste?
That's a new word.
Okay, so for you and for the audience, orphaned waste is waste that is just abandoned.
Mm.
So in Zambia, we are, I would love to say, almost in safe hands with the Zambia Environmental Management Agency. They do have a mandate to ensure that corporates and individuals are being held accountable for the waste that they put out. So they will have, regulations in the Environmental Management Act that are there to say you have a limit on your carbon waste, and you're supposed to provide mitigation, for some of these things. So a lot of the corporates, mines, blah, blah, they are held accountable to that extent.
Yeah.
But there are aspects of our society that are just abandoned. So where there's a bunch of plastic and all that, and you see that even in this in our central business district in town, just a bunch of waste that has
Yes.
gone too far,
Yeah.
right? And who do you now hold accountable? So before, I did participate in a stakeholder engagement for what we call the environmental fund that ZEMA is trying to, it was always there in our 2011 regulation, but it was not implemented. So it didn't have follow-up regulation to back it up and give them the authority. But the environmental fund is supposed to help ZEMA take care of that waste that nobody else is taking care of. So
Okay.
if you follow me, for example, there's a water bottle company.
Yeah.
This water bottle company will be responsible for its waste. So they would have to go around and pick up all their water bottles because they're responsible for putting that out. But maybe near their factory, they are
They
being
do that. Yeah.
responsible. But somewhere deep in the,
Yeah, they may
Imagine
not
they're
be doing.
probably saying, we're not responsible for this alone, so we'll pick out what we've done. And
Yes.
it's very difficult to identify.
Yeah.
So you find a lot of waste that has been abandoned because nobody's taking responsibility
Accountability.
for
Yeah.
it. And hopefully the fund can be implemented and now Zema can have the capacity to do that. But it starts really with us. And it starts with the fact that we have to realize there's inter-user accountability. Your business may not directly be producing that water bottle, but you do use it. And so you need to be responsible for that as well. And so for me, small businesses can, come together and try to have an impact on some of that orphaned waste. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of engaging with one another. It's unfortunate, but I think that's the idea of saying eco-friendly that we now know not a lot of people actually take seriously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Mhm.
And what you're speaking about reminds me of a time that I was in a certain country. I was in a certain country and they actually have really strong laws
Mhm.
regarding even just waste. Like if you throw any litter,
Mhm.
you are, I think you are liable to paying close to $2,000.
Wow.
Yes,
Mm.
and the streets were really clean.
Clean.
So
Mm.
I would just like to find out from you if we have any legal framework or any regulations
Mhm.
that are directly trying to curb greenwashing in Zambia.
Well, we haven't had many cases where directly a company has been held accountable for greenwashing.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the lack of instance. But what we do have is we do have bodies that are there to hold companies accountable for misleading their consumers. So we have the Consumer Protection Commission that implements the Act, the Consumer Protection Act. We also, like I said, have ZEMA that implements the Environmental Management Act. And within these legislations, there are provisions that are protecting consumers from being misled and actually holding organizations accountable. But like in one of my writings, I said corporates specifically are not being held accountable to the extent because, they can't be taken to jail. Of course, maybe directors can be held accountable, but that's where there is real intentional spillage or harming of the environment. Okay, like we had a recent case where a company was depositing into spilling their waste into the Kafue River.
Yeah.
Then that, of course, that's intentionally doing this. But with greenwashing, the intention is not very bad. They want to look like they're doing the right thing. So the Environmental Management Agency is not going to say, you've said eco-friendly, unless, maybe the Consumer Protection will come in to say, do what you say you are, be what you say you are. An example that I discovered as I was researching even for this is Bed Bath and Beyond. They were, emphasizing that they were using bamboo to create some of their clothing and their products, but actually they were using rayon and then mixing in a bit of bamboo. But that process included a lot of chemicals that were harmful.
Yes.
So the greenwashing comes in to say it's not just about what you say you're doing, because they argued, no, we are using bamboo. Bamboo is one of the products.
Yes.
But the process that the bamboo goes through in
Yeah.
order for it to become that is what is extremely toxic. So it's about the company presenting itself not only as showing that they're using sustainable practices, but really, are they taking responsibility for the impact of what their products have to go through, And the whole idea really of pushing a more green economy is do things that are sustainable for the environment, do the best thing for the environment. I love to say, and this is borrowed from one of the writers that I've read a number of times, and it's that we are not inheriting our world or our environment from our ancestors. We are safeguarding it for our children. And
Yes.
so the whole idea is just do the best that you can, to safeguard the environment. Try not to use toxic products, try not to have to just set a fire outside your yard. I'm talking to you guys, consumers. Don't do that. There's a way to go about waste.
Yes.
And I think the government is also, learning as we evolve, learning as we go what the best things are. The fact that ESG is a conversation that's so hot right now is for me such a huge relief.
Yeah.
Because it means we're moving in the right direction. We're
Yeah.
acknowledging that taking care of the environment is essential to business practice. And we are, a lot of companies I've seen are now appointing specifically an ESG associate within the organization that is dedicated to just making sure that they're making efforts towards that. That's good.
Yeah.
We're still doing better, but that's good.
Okay.
Mm.
And so, of course, right now we do hope we will continue to have such roles created, but I'm wondering, in terms of lawyers and compliance professionals, do they have a role to play in ensuring that there are no misrepresentations of our ESG practices?
Yeah, I actually think they have a very key role to play. We take on a very advisory role, especially for our in-house counsel, but even for just general counsel, I'd say number one, check what's going out there about the organization. So a lot of mishaps that we find where companies being caught for greenwashing is their marketing exaggerated, what was there. So I would say let organizations allow counsel and compliance to have oversight over some of the things that are being spoken about the
Yeah.
organization. And if they see that the intention is good, but what's on the ground is different, can we have an aligning in terms of compliance? Because compliance isn't just, and now I say this, it's not just about following what's in the law. I've been teaching this a lot, that it's not just about, ticking boxes.
Yeah.
It's really about how are you advising your board to go beyond and practice best practices. That's why even in Zambia, we do have our Companies Act, and you'd be able to tell the board, okay, you need to do this, you need to have a minimum of 2 members, you need to have this kind of meetings. But also for the council that I do get the privilege of training, I tell them it's not enough. You need to implement best practices in how you advise your board as company secretary, and whatever other position you're playing.
Yeah.
You need to be saying, we also need to pay attention to our ESG standards. What have we set? And let the reporting be accurate and true. I find that the people appreciate progress much more than we've done it already. You can say, this is where we've started. We've gone this far. We've
Yeah.
put 5 taps in our community. It may not be the same as what FQM is doing,
Yes.
but it can be progress towards you are realizing we need to be contributing something. And as a compliance professional, advise them to do the best that they can in terms of, following these standards and best practices. Continuously educate yourself as counsel. You can't just stick to what you learned in law school. Let practice continuously evolve. Studying is part of what we do, and you should be constantly aware, even of cases that are not, in Zambia. So it's not enough for you to say there's no greenwashing case. You should be saying, okay, how did it work with others? How can I help my organization avoid that kind of penalty?
Okay. So, are there some red flags in ESG reporting that can lead to legal risk for an organization?
Yes. Um, I would say the first one would be ambiguous wording. So, like we're saying, just saying eco-friendly, sustainable practices. We want to know what do you
What do you
mean? What have you
mean?
done? So your wording should be tied to something that is an example. I use First Quantum Minerals as an example because honestly, in my research, I'm very impressed with how they do things. Just when you get on their website, you see this very great outlook, but also there's a report that's accessible to all that you can read about, the work that they've done, the progress that they've made in their community. I would advise a lot of other organizations to follow suit. So show this. And I know a lot of them try to show, but then don't have the backing. But let it be something that is, tangible, to the extent of your ability. I would also say another red flag is refusal to be transparent. So we are sustainable, but then that report is just
Yeah.
internal. Nobody else can access your report to see
Yeah.
how. Yeah, that's also a red flag. And of course, I think the most obvious one is where you don't see anything at all. There are no efforts. There's nothing being done.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is worse than even pretending to be doing something.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's very clear, and we now know what to look out for,
Mhm.
especially now. I do see companies making deliberate moves to include a report. I
Mhm.
think for even in accounting standards, they've
Mm.
now put across a requirement that
Mhm.
we need to report on ESG. So I think now we know, even as consumers of those annual reports or
Mm.
sustainability reports, we know what we have to look out for.
Right.
Yeah. And are there differences in greenwashing accountability between the big multinationals and the SMEs?
Right.
Or do we have to be held to the same standard, for example?
Yeah, realistically speaking, we can't be held to the same
Yeah.
standard because the impact on the environment that a huge company, if even I can give an example of a milling company, they'll have so many, their production is massive.
Yeah.
And so you can't really hold the same accountability, or even a cement production factory compared to Vanamulenga down the street,
Yes.
who
Yeah.
is selling spices.
Yeah.
It's not realistic to hold to the same standard. But I
Yeah.
will say that does not excuse SMEs from participating in the conversation on ESG. Start small. Start from where you are. How are you disposing of your waste? Are you being accountable for it? Even just instead of bundling up your waste and throwing it at the back of the store, have your proper garbage trucks, and, call the Lusaka City Council. They do pick up those waste, and they have a way to do that. And also something very impressive and wonderful that this has made me smile, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
There are some Chinese factories in the industrial area
Okay.
that have started to encourage the locals to bring their waste directly to the factory in exchange for money.
Oh.
So where they will say, depending on the weight, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you see people collect plastics and all that, and they'll weigh it, and then they'll give you a 200 kwacha or whatever it is in
Okay.
exchange for that, and they use that waste to reproduce and make chairs and different
Okay.
things. I think that's brilliant. It's a step in the right direction,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the fact that they are using wasted resource
Mm-hmm.
as their resource to produce something that is
Yes.
being used. So that's really brilliant, and I really think that it's also a business idea somewhere for somebody. I'd love to see
Mm-hmm.
more Zambians getting involved in
Yeah.
in that as well.
Okay, that's really good. So basically, even though you don't have those requirements to report on ESG, you
Mhm.
can still play your part.
Yeah,
And even though there's no one trying to hold you accountable, you can still have that personal responsibility to your environment.
yeah. And Zema is not just for companies, it's mainly actually for
Mm.
individuals. If anything, I've been pushing for companies to be held more accountable. Of course, they are held accountable to the extent of their waste and their breach of the law.
Yeah.
But as individuals, you do not want to be found wanting. There are penalties. A few years ago, we had this, I think it must have been a movie TV or Diamond TV or something,
Yeah.
where these two were caught throwing things in the middle of town, and the officer made them go around picking,
Oh, wow.
litter around. I don't know how the legal basis for what he could have used to
Yeah.
keep them there, but inside, as an environmental activist, for me, I said, very good. It was a good example to show other people that they can be held accountable. So
Yeah.
I'll just say, it starts with ourselves. Just don't be the person throwing something out of the window.
Yeah.
And also just plant your trees, plant your flowers, give back to your environment, take care of your surroundings. It's a good enough place for you to start.
Okay. So, in your view, as a person who is really passionate about the environment and as implementing sustainable practices, do you feel that the current enforcement around greenwashing, do you feel it's effective, or are there some gaps, and how do you feel they can be filled, if any?
I take a very unique perspective as an activist. For me, I don't really fight the regulators, right? I
Yeah,
want to encourage the regulators and work with them. So
yeah.
you find that I work with even Zema on a number of projects in
Oh,
order to encourage. Like last year, we had the Ozone Layer Day
oh.
celebrations, and we collaborated Laz and Zema to bring awareness. I do
Mhm.
feel that it's the long route to change regulation, okay? Because regulators are just enforcing what's already in the law. So it's the long route, we have to go to parliament and have a bill. And I'm grateful for my peers that are doing that. But what can we do in the now, right? Is that we need to bring more awareness to even enforcing of the regulations that are already there. I think that it would benefit us to partner with regulators as they are held accountable. Because remember, as a regulator, it's their everyday mandate to be doing
Yes.
this. So
Yeah.
even as we have our suggestions that I think most of them I've noticed are happy to receive our suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
it's that us, the people, are not partnering with them to execute those things. A lot of people would rather evade the enforcers than, partner with them. Snitch on your neighbors. That's my advice. If your neighbor is doing something completely ridiculous,
Yes.
report them to Zema. They will be very happy to receive that
Really?
report. I'm telling you, they would. They'll be very happy to receive that report. If you see something that is, you see the stream running by your house and it's just covered in oil, I mean, you should report that. You should
Okay.
definitely report that, and they will be happy to send people to inspect what's going on. They have the mechanisms. A lot of these organizations actually have the ability, and you find they've got, they test the water, they see how it is, and they will look for the source. But our citizens are quiet. So even with the Kafue River situation, it's because the citizens spoke up. They did say,
Mm.
our fish are dying, this is what's going on,
Yeah.
and we know the spillage is coming from there. That is helping them. Of
Mm.
course, I can't really speak to an ongoing case. As
Yeah.
council, we don't do that. But I will say, that really helped the regulators be aware of what is going on. So rather than seeing ourselves on different sides, we need to see ourselves on the same side, trying to achieve the same thing. Um, we do that a lot with Vantagepoint. You'll find Vantagepoint collaborating with the Data Protection Commissioner's Office, with ZEMA, with LAS, with all these bodies, because we are saying, with Parker as well, we're saying, if we're going to help you with compliance and advise you on compliance,
Mm-hmm.
it is futile to
Yeah.
to advise you on what our personal opinion is when the regulators and those who have the authority to fine you are saying something different. So we
Okay.
will go and understand what they want and then translate it to you so that you can do the right thing. And when that regulation changes, even for the better, we'll still understand it and come back and advise you, oh, now we've improved, we're doing it this way.
Okay. I think that's something that we need to learn as Zambians, is to also just speak up. I like that you mentioned that, and you reminded me of how growing up we had someone in the neighborhood who was burning stuff at very random times during the day. I think at 2 p.m. they would suddenly start burning stuff, and now there'll be smoke in the whole entire neighborhood. We would have to close our windows, and we complained about that amongst ourselves for years. And now I'm starting to learn that we could have gone
Yeah.
somewhere and just i- like placed a complaint, and maybe
Mhm.
they would have looked into it to say, why do you have to burn this every day? Is there no other waste management
Mhm.
methods that you could use?
Yeah.
So that's a really good point that I have learned from you. I think now, if I notice something, I would speak up about it. But yeah. And speaking of just when you see people doing something that they shouldn't, I mean, even in organizations. So who do we need to hold accountable for any ESG misrepresentations or greenwashing? Is it the marketing team? Is it the board? Is it the leadership as a whole? Is it the compliance team? Who do we hold accountable when me, for example, as a junior office staff, I noticed that, okay, we are greenwashing. Where do I even go? Where do I even start from? Because sometimes the wider community may not notice that.
Right.
You, as a person who understands that, okay, this is greenwashing, you may not be privy to that information, but someone in the organization may spot that and be like, okay, but this sounds a little bit off, like, like that company that you talked about where they are saying, okay, but we do use this product in the process somewhere, but we are coming out pretending as if this is the only thing we use and there's no other chemicals. So as someone who's just small in the organization, where do I even start from holding the organization accountable?
You know, I love to joke, but honestly, it's true. Start from the suggestion box.
Do all organizations have suggestion boxes?
They should have suggestion boxes, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's for those that don't, of course, it makes it more difficult. But whenever you have the platform, again, I'd say speak up. But who is responsible for how a company is behaving in that way? It's definitely the board of directors. You know, the law says that the board are the only ones with the mandate to act on behalf of the company, and they have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the company. It's in the best interest of the company, in my opinion, to uh, act in an environmentally sustainable way. Not only in my opinion, but it's generally in the best interest of every organization to act in the best interest of the company by, being environmentally sustainable and having practices that represent that. So if you are an officer within the company and you don't have the power, the authority, the board are who to be held accountable, but they delegate, right? So they delegate to the CEO and the C-suite and to everybody else. So I hope, it's unfortunate that maybe your voice may sound small, but whenever you do have the opportunity, I love to think that if the company is executing ESG and their governance practices are very well done, then there should be a structure where your report and feedback is given to the leaders of the organization. And when you have an opportunity to have them before you, you should bring it up. Even if it's the marketing team, whisper to somebody at lunch, I think that's not representing us well. It will save them because they're going to be on Twitter and somebody's going to point it out there, and then their reputation will plummet. So it's much better you say something when you see something wrong rather than just backtalk the company that you're working for. The difference starts with you.
Okay. But what if you speak out and you are ignored or you are intimidated by the
Right.
leadership? Because sometimes when we see these big corporate entities going down, um, this is not directly to ESG, but the time when there was a lot of ethical issues in the audit firms. So for us, when I was doing my accounting studies, we learned in corporate governance of all these big corporate failures, Enron and
Enron
all that.
scandal.
And the whole time, the employees knew that, okay, what we are doing is wrong.
Yeah.
We're getting these kickbacks from these organizations and what. Obviously, someone might have spoken up about it, but because the leadership may be trying to achieve something and cut corners, they may silence those voices. So in the case of ESG misrepresentations, where do I go if, for example, my leadership is not considering um, my voice that I have chosen to use to speak up in the right direction and they stifle it? Where do I go if I need help to ensure that, okay, and if I even just need clarity to say, okay, this looks like greenwashing, but I'm not sure. So where do I go as an individual?
You know, the reality of what you're speaking is so real, you know.
Yeah.
I teach on ethical leadership on the Compliance Edge podcast. And really, even when I get an opportunity to train organizations, this is something that I bring up because there is no good governance structure without ethical leadership being the foundation of everything that we're doing. And ethical leadership speaks to even, you know, removing those aspects of intimidation and taking accountability. And the Enron scandal is one great example. But I will say this, the Enron scandal came up and Enron unraveled because somebody in there
Spoke
spoke
up.
up.
Yeah.
Right, you find that with Enron, it was the people that the board was delegating to. So the CEOs and all those people were the ones who were collaborating to misrepresent things and to lie. But when it got to the right people, when it got to the board, when it got to the regulators, it all fell apart, right?
Yeah.
So there's still reward for somebody out there who spoke up when it was difficult. It's very unfortunate that a lot of people feel intimidated in their organizations, and the most we can do is really just continue to raise awareness with what you're doing here at the Money and People podcast. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Somebody will watch this and a switch will go off in their minds, and
Yeah.
you know they will make a difference. Let's just keep speaking up. Of course, I keep insisting it starts from where you are. But if you are in a leadership position and you're watching this, then you need to find a way to get in touch with the feedback from the grassroots of your organization. You'd be very surprised to hear how people are experiencing your leadership and the organization as a whole.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. And I want you to speak to these companies that are out there trying to be transparent and compliant in
Mhm.
their sustainability messaging. What advice would you give them?
Well, not only advice, but actually, as I've been handling a lot of environmental sustainability initiatives with Vantagepoint, we are working on what we're calling the Corporate Environmental Responsibility Summit, where we are inviting all of you corporates to the table. We want to see what you're doing and we want to hear your efforts. Now, of course, this is a voluntary thing for corporates and not government organizations. But for corporates who are agreeing with us that we need to be doing better as organizations and who are going to come forward and say, these are the efforts we are making. You will not only get advice at that summit on what you can be doing better, but we hope to make this something we're yearly accountable about. And we're coming back to say, okay, we've all signed on this summit and we are saying, let's be more responsible for our environment, and we're backing it up. And you are agreeing to be more transparent with your fellow corporates. So look out for that. And I hope that you'll be happy to join us in this movement that we hope will change the outlook of a generation on how we can be more responsible for our environmental sustainability. It's no longer about corporate social responsibility. With ESG, we have come to a place where now we understand that taking care of your environment is good even for you as an organization. So partner with Vantagepoint, and you know, genuine, even if you don't partner with Vantagepoint, take it upon yourselves to be more responsible for the environment. There's a lot of us that are really looking forward to a better future for our kids and for those that will come after us. Also, I'm working with Sustain Life as well. There's a lot of other people and organizations that are excited to, you know, do better. So be part of us, and you know, I hope Delia will share information, and you can see how you can be more involved. It will be to be amazing. We need to do this.
Yeah,
Our environment needs it. We don't want to find ourselves on, you know, the sad end of things.
definitely.
We should all want to do better.
Okay, cool. And I think, yeah, we will, like I mentioned, just include some of your handles in our description that people can get in touch, even if they want to join the summit or just to consult with you. And so, this is a funny question that I should have asked in the beginning, but I'll
Sure.
ask now. What's one ESG myth that you would like to bust once and for all?
Oh my God. I was looking forward to this question, and I will tell you, and I want everybody to listen to me. Okay? ESG is not just a trend. It's not
Yeah.
just passing. It's actually already fragmented in the law. We do have governance regulation. We do have social regulation, even in our constitution. We have, environmentally sustainable practices that are already embedded in the law in the Environmental Management Act. And we're now just bringing it together. It's been a conversation. We just used to talk about it more on the corporate social responsibility aspect. But with that, very few people got on board. Only India, I know, codified corporate social responsibility, forcing corporates to be accountable. But with ESG, we don't even need to embed it in the law. It's already partly in the law. It's about corporates realizing this is the difference between you succeeding and you failing. So you have no choice. You have to get on board with ESG. It's not passing, it's evolving, it's growing, it's getting bigger and better. I can't wait for King 5 to give us a bit more direction. Of course, it's not bad that us as Zambia, we're waiting for another country to give that regulation.
Yes.
But it's become a great standard that not only African countries, but European countries are also looking to see where are we, because of the stakeholders that are involved in crafting that regulation. And it's just a great recommendation. It's best practice. I personally advise my clients to get on board with it as well. So I'm excited for us to keep growing. I'll give a disclaimer in advance that when I evolve and know better, don't hold me accountable for just what I've said now. Just keep watching how we're going to grow and how we're going to learn this together. So yeah.
Okay, great. And in conclusion, Mulubwa, what gives you hope about the future of sustainable business practices?
Just even this conversation,
Yeah.
just even this conversation, just the fact that I'm being invited places to talk about sustainability. It's not something I'm just writing about as a student anymore.
Yeah.
It's something that, continually we're being, a lot of our consultancy right now is, with human resource and others that can be a bit more self-sustaining, but we are getting those clients that want to find out about how can they position themselves better. So I really see greenwashing clearing away with time. Companies are accepting that they don't know everything and that they can be doing better and that they don't want to just use these terms anymore. They're learning from one another. And globally speaking, it's not just about, oh, there isn't a case here in Zambia. They're also learning from how other organizations abroad were held accountable. And that really warms my heart. I think I'm optimistic about our direction, where we're getting better every day, and we're making more efforts to be sustainable. I also see even just something as simple as plants. When you get into even here where we are, that's already speaking to the fact that people are caring more about sustainable practices. So I'm proud of the progress. Slow but sure.
Okay, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this episode. I have learned so much, and I do hope that our audience is going to connect with you because there's so much to learn, and even just to consult with you with Vantagepoint, with consultants. So thank you so much to our audience for tuning into this episode where we learned a lot about greenwashing and its legal implications. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.